Have you ever thought about how you translate something that feels, well, untranslatable? I mean, how do you take these huge spiritual, philosophical ideas from an ancient culture and make them work in a totally different language, like English? Well, today we're diving into the life and work of Raja Rao, one of India's most brilliant writers, who basically spent his entire life on that exact quest. And his journey, what he found, it's just incredible. This one quote, this really gets to the heart of everything about Raja Rao. You know, he wasn't just a novelist. He was a philosopher, a mystic, a seeker. For him, language wasn't just about talking. No, it was something that came out of this deep, sacred silence. And that idea, it shaped his entire life and everything he ever wrote. So, to really get his writing, you first have to understand his journey. Rao's life was stretched between worlds, between different continents, cultures, and ways of thinking. And that unique perspective is exactly what made his voice so powerful. I mean, look at this path. It was truly global. He starts out in a traditional Brahmin family in South India, right? Then he's off to France, soaking up European literature and philosophy. He comes back to India right in the middle of its independence struggle, and then spends the last 40 years of his life teaching philosophy in America. This constant back and forth between East and West, that became the central tension and, really, the creative engine for all of his work. You have to understand, Rao's novels aren't just stories. Think of them more like maps. Each one is this deeply personal search for answers to big, metaphysical questions, a search for the self, for ultimate reality. They're basically his own spiritual quests, just laid out for us on the page. His very first novel, Kanthapura, is just a landmark. It's really one of the first major Indian novels written in English. What he does so brilliantly is capture the impact of Gandhi's nonviolent movement, not on the big political stage, but in this tiny remote village in South India. He showed how these huge ideas could totally transform the soul of a community. Okay, and then there's his most famous book, The Serpent and the Rope. It's this semi-autobiographical masterpiece about a young Indian man in Europe who's searching for spiritual truth. The title itself, it comes from a classic idea in Advaita Vedanta philosophy. Imagine you're in a dark room and you see what you think is a serpent. You're terrified, right? But then the light comes on and you realize it was just a rope. The serpent is the illusion, our misunderstanding of the world. And the rope, well, the rope is reality. It's such a powerful metaphor for his entire quest. And that brings us to what some people think is the peak of his philosophy, The Cat and Shakespeare. It's this weird, funny, and incredibly deep little book that he actually called a book of prayer. And it's in this book that he lays out one of his most powerful and unique ideas, one that kind of reframes our entire relationship with the divine. So what is this big idea? It's a philosophy of absolute, total surrender. And he explains it through a really simple, beautiful metaphor: the relationship between a mother cat and her kitten. This whole concept is known as the cat-hold theory, or Marjara Nyaya if you want to get technical with the Sanskrit. It's this profound idea from Hindu philosophy that says the path to salvation isn't about struggling and striving. It's about absolute trust. The idea is that the soul just lets go and allows itself to be carried by the divine, just like a totally helpless kitten is carried by its mother. This comparison just makes it crystal clear. So, on one hand, you've got the monkey theory. The baby monkey has to actively work to cling to its mother for dear life. That's a path of effort. But Rao, he championed the cat-hold theory. And here, the kitten does nothing. It's completely passive. The mother cat does all the work. It's a path of grace, not effort. When you boil it down, it's the difference between holding on and simply being held. And just listen to Rao's own beautiful description from the novel. For him, this state wasn't weakness. It was absolute safety and pure joy. You know, in a world that's all about hustle and being in control, he's suggesting that real freedom might actually come from letting go. It's a pretty radical idea of trust. All of this deep philosophical thinking led Rao to a really unique understanding of his homeland. For him, the meaning of India went way beyond just borders or history or politics. He saw India as a unique way of being, a whole different approach to understanding yourself and your relationship to the universe. To him, it was a contribution to human consciousness itself. This wasn't about nationalism or anything like that. It was a deep philosophical vision. So what's the lasting impact of this seeker who lived between all these different worlds? Well, he fundamentally changed the course of not just Indian literature in English, but world literature as a whole. And hey, his contributions were recognized all over the globe. He won India's highest literary honor, the Sahitya Academy Award, plus two of its highest civilian awards. And, this is huge, he won the 1988 Neustadt Prize, which is often called the American Nobel. That really cemented his status as a giant of world literature. So ultimately, this is his legacy. He was a pioneer, one of the first to prove that the English language could be a vehicle for the deepest, most complex ideas in Indian thought. He bridged East and West, not by simplifying his philosophy, but by creating a brand new lyrical style of writing that could actually hold all of that complexity. He showed the world that a novel could be a form of meditation. We started with Rao's idea that true words come from a sacred silence. He basically dedicated his life to listening to that silence and trying to translate what he heard. So I'll leave you with this question to think about. In our endlessly noisy, connected world, what might we hear, what might we begin to understand if we too just took a moment to stop and listen?